Welcome back. Apologies for the back and forth. We've been struggling with the network connection, but I do believe that we have Professor Tukur now. Prof, can you hear me now? Welcome to the program. Hello, good morning, Prof. Can you hear me?
Good morning.
All right, good morning, Prof. Welcome to the program once again. So initially I was asking questions around whether you could provide some more details about the meeting that the ACF had on Thursday with top leaders in the North.
Yes, the meeting on Wednesday, that is about 2 days ago, was a meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Area Consultative Forum, and the chairman of the Board of Trustees is Alhaji Bashir Alhaji Wazirin Duse. It was a meeting that brought together all key personalities in the North who are members of the board to discuss about the current state of affairs of the nation and, of course, the reaction of the Area Consultative Forum so as to set the agenda for future activities and future engagement with political leaders, with community leaders, and all segments of the North, and, of course, the nation as a whole on affairs, on matters that affect the North in general and the North in particular, and the country in general. We had over 150 participants, many personalities from all professions, professionals, retired civil servants, retired military and police personnel, retired members of the security agencies, and so on and so forth. Well, the meeting actually was a whole tapestry of the North, representing all its various compositions, religious, ethnic, political, and so on. As you probably know, we had in attendance about 9 or 10 former civilian governors from the northern states.
All right, Prof. Banditry, insecurity, all forms of insecurity. We have food shortages, flooding, among different issues that some would say have been plaguing the North in the last few years. What were the resolve of the BOT in terms of addressing these issues and, of course, the collaborative call of the ACF to the government?
The result is, first of all, that these problems are getting dire, and they are not only escalating, they are spreading, affecting all the three, if you like, geopolitical zones of the North, all the 19 northern states. And that at the rate things are going, so many people, and especially the Area Consultative Forum, needs to do something so that there will be interventions from all possible quarters in order to see an end or to reduce as much as possible to the barest minimum some of these problems. Of course, on top of the many problems and affecting everything is insecurity. Different regions of the North, different states have the experience differently. In the Northwest is banditry, especially rural banditry. In the Northeast is, of course, religious insurgency. And, of course, in the North Central, again, banditry and frequent clashes between herders and sedentary farmers. So these problems, of course, have been compounded by widespread and especially multidimensional poverty. Economic activities in the North have been crippled. At the best of times, you know, the economic condition of the North is challenging, like I said, with widespread poverty. But the security situation is compounding the issue, has been compounding the issue. Travel, commerce, agricultural production has simply been crippled. We cannot go on like this. Some intervention has to be effective and urgently too, because the problem and its impact on our people, and we think that will impact on Nigeria as a whole, is getting more and more serious. On top of it, of course, are climate-related issues. As you have observed, flooding in many parts of the country, even with the challenges in agriculture. The flooding is coming again, compounding the issues further. The second, overall, the situation is very serious. And of course, the economic crisis that the whole country is facing. But of course, the impact on the North is greater for the simple reason that already, even before the current crisis, multidimensional poverty has been a fact of life in the North. So, the issues are compounding each other, and we thought something needs to be done.
All right, Prof. Some would argue that the government has responded in one way or the other to some of these negative impacts that we've seen happen or affect certain states in the North, or generally the North. But then we see what happened in Yobe. We saw the recent attacks by terrorists.
Yes.
And of course, the pronouncement by the Minister of State for Defense to the security chiefs on the Sokoto matter as well. Would you say this is a step in the right direction? And are there any other recommendations that the ACF is putting forth that the government should follow, in its own words, to avert some of these challenges that you've so mentioned?
Yes, let me begin with the last aspect of your question. The ACF is setting up a high-powered committee that would look into various issues. The first one, of course, is the issue of unity in the North. A committee is working on that, and of course there will be a committee on security that will advise the government. As you have said, these things we have seen them. You have forgotten the resurgence of suicide bombing in Bama a few weeks ago, and then the massacre in Yobe, the increasing banditry, Sokoto, Zamfara, Katsina State, going into Niger State, in Plateau and other places. These are worrying. These problems are being addressed by government. There is no doubt about it. But the problems are also dynamic. They are expanding in scope, they are expanding in spread, and so on. And of course, intensity. The massacre in Yobe, the abduction, kidnapping, and so on in other parts of the North are worrying. As you know, of course, these problems have been affecting agricultural production, with farmers unable to go to the farm, unable to harvest, and so on. And then, of course, the flood. Overall, we appreciate and we acknowledge that government has been doing all in its power, we think, to address the problem. But the fact that the problem has spread, it tells us one thing, that we either don't understand fully or don't fully understand, or the response of government is inadequate. And of course, other measures need to be taken along. That policy has to be dynamic in its approach to the problems, because the problems are also dynamic. So we would like to see a more rigorous approach, using all conventional and legal and lawful means to end these problems that appear to be crippling the economy and society of northern Nigeria, and by extension, Nigeria as a whole. It's worrying, and it should give every one of us in government, outside of government, in the private sector, it should give us sleepless nights, that we cannot enjoy normal life, or rather life as normal as can be managed.
All right. Prof, you're a professor of sociology and also the director of peace studies at the Usman Danfodio University in Sokoto. Prof, would you say there was a point in time where you observed or noticed an ideological shift or in the foundations of the North? And would you say that has in one way or the other compounded the problems that we see in the North, especially in local communities where unfortunately some of them have been turned to informants and are working directly with bandits and also terrorists? Would you say this has compounded the problem in one way or the other?
Yes, just a little correction. I was the pioneer director of the Center for Peace Studies.
Okay,
but to address the question directly, yes, you see, like I said, the problems have been dynamic, in particular the banditry issue. Something that started with the normal and usual historical farmer-herder clash had over time evolve or snowball into a bigger problem. And it has become more than just a few bandits waylaying people, sacking villages. It has become like an enterprise with so many factors and so many actors feeding into it. When you say, for example, when your observation about the role of informants is very, very critical. What it tells us is that the problem has become organic. It is growing from communities. When you say informants, it's not just people who supply information. It's people who supply weapons. It's people who supply drugs. It's health workers who go to the bush to treat injured bandits. It is it is people who supply food and all kinds of logistics. So it's become a big problem that involves more than your normal people as you would think. The Katsina State Governor, Dr. Radha, a few weeks ago was in the news, telling us about the role of a village head who was bribed and allowed be informed the bandits, allowed people to come into his community. We have all kinds of people feeding into it, and that makes it more and more dangerous. Like I said, anything organic that grows within the community is more difficult to deal with. The Chief of Defense Staff has said a few weeks ago, again, we have people in communities informing the bandits of the movement of troops and other security agencies. So long as these kind of things are happening, the problem becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and more difficult to deal with. So the approach to banditry has to be multifaceted. It has to aim not just at the underlying factors, but all these other factors that feed into it, that supply logistics and so on and so forth. The approach has to change in order to meet up with the new dimensions, with the emerging dimensions of the problem. When you talk of informant, it's not just one person passing information. It's anybody who contributes in one way or the other.
Indeed.
Male, female, people of all religions, people of all tribes, and so on, are feeding into this. And of course, at the bottom of it all is a lot of people are making money out of banditry and insecurity. And we all, as a community, we all have to fight this head on, because it is an existential threat that has to be dealt with.
Professor Tukur Mohammed-Baba, ACF's National Publicity Secretary and also Professor of Sociology. Thank you so much for your contributions on these developments, and definitely we hope to have you again to do a review of the situation as more events develop. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak.
Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Yes, indeed. And that's the much we can take on the discussion segment. We now go on another break. And when we return this time, we take a look at the front pages of select national dailies for the newspaper review. Join us again.